Welcome to the Bowden Blitz ACC edition. I'm Joe Lisi, joined by former National Coach of the Year, Terry Bowden. Coach, a great slate of action this coming Saturday. We'll take a look at the updated odds entering this weekend. Georgia Tech now is the team to beat in the ACC. They have the best price to win an ACC championship at plus 175, followed by Virginia, SMU, Miami, and Pittsburgh. Thoughts about the conference entering this Saturday? Can the ACC get more than one team into the college football playoff?
Yeah, I think they can. I think if you can get the right combination, make it to the championship game, you might get both of those teams in and get two. I think you still got Georgia Tech and Virginia in play, obviously. And then Miami's one of those teams that has the 8-2 record and won some big games. And if they win out, you never know at 10-2, would they be the most enticing team? So I do think there is a chance that the ACC gets two in, but you could only bet on. I would only bet on one, but there's a possibility of two. But it'll take away from somebody else in the conference that's got pretty good football teams in the other conferences.
When you look at last Saturday, the best thing that potentially could have happened for the conference happened in Durham is Virginia knocking off Duke, because if Duke was a 4-loss football team, the perception is that the ACC could have been left out of the college football playoff just from a stronger conference potentially out of the group of five and marquee wins, but they take care of business. They get a quality road win. They bounce back after that lackluster effort against Wake Forest, and they dominate in style, Coach. 34-17. They really wore down Duke in the trenches in this ball game. Tony Elliott has done a fantastic job, and this team now is starting to trend in just the right direction with 2 weeks left in the regular season.
That's right. I mean, the difference in this game obviously was Chandler Morris playing as opposed to getting hurt and not playing last week when they lost. And he is a real difference maker. I don't know if he's a NFL quarterback. I don't think he's a Heisman candidate, but nobody means more to their team. He's a winner. You know, he's a son of a coach. He's a winner. He has great football IQ. He's smart. He means everything to that team. And when he's there, you can hear it from the coach. You can hear it from the other head coach in post game. He makes a difference in that football team. And remember, Virginia's a team that it takes very little to make a difference because they win every game by just a couple of points. They've won 3 games in overtime. And I want to say the last 5 games or 3 games is by 7 total points. And so they're there. He was back. That's the reason they are there. And I guess if they can just hold on and beat Virginia Tech in their last game, they will be one of the teams in the championship game.
And you don't think of Virginia and physicality, but they really wore down Duke, especially between the tackles. They were able to run the football in the second half of that matchup, never threatened. They had a significant first half lead against the Blue Devils. And this is a Blue Devil team, Coach, that we talked about it in the pregame. You know, at home, they have not stepped up, unfortunately. 3 big games now. Georgia Tech, the loss earlier in the regular season to Illinois, and then this matchup against Virginia. They were significantly outclassed. They have played much better on the road than they have at home this year.
Well, they just are inconsistent. And you're right, whether on the road or at home, they have just been inconsistent. And they were their own worst enemies against Virginia in this football game. I think they probably have a little better quarterback, although I talk a lot about Chandler Morris, but they're inconsistent. They don't play good every week, and they lose games like this. And so it's kind of a year for Duke that could have been, but right now it would have been more of a mess than anything else if they would have pulled that game off and gotten into the championship game with the record that they have.
You think that this loss, because Duke now is 5-5 overall, they have lost 3 of the last 4. Is Manny Diaz not potentially as hot of a commodity as maybe he was 6 weeks ago?
Without a doubt. It's what have you done for me lately? And I think you have to really watch a team like Duke over a couple of seasons. You might have a one special year, but if you're a coach really that can get them to a bowl year in and year out, you're heads and tails above where they have been in the past. And so he's not a hot item right now because he's not winning it. If he takes them to the conference championship and loses 1 or 2 games, he's hot again. But right now, I think he's probably content right now if he can say, man, let's just get our team to a bowl game so we can feel like we're having some success right now.
A team that's back to 500 got a victory last Friday night on the road. It wasn't easy. They gutted it out. It was Clemson. They win that matchup 20-19. They knock out Louisville out of contention for a college football playoff appearance potentially. This was a team that the Cardinals had dominated Clemson last year in Death Valley. The defense forced turnovers. They made some plays in the final 5 minutes, and they gutted out. You saw Dabo Swinney at the end of the game in the press conference. He was as high as anybody, excited to get that victory. What did that mean for the program to get back to 500? And you saw the jubilation out of Dabo Swinney after the big win.
Well, I said this before the game, and I do know Dabo. His legacy or his accomplishment at Clemson means a lot. He has 19 straight bowl games he's coached. It would have meant something very different in the direction of his program if he would have missed that mark too. So he's got a chance to get to a bowl game again and keep. That's the top 5 in America as for a continuous bowl streak. So that was very important to him. You could tell on the sideline. But I'm going to say this. That was a game that I don't think either team deserved to win. It was like who wants to lose the game the most? You've heard the old saying, we made one more good play than them. This was a case of Louisville just making one more bad play than Clemson because they both made a lot of bad plays. Clemson fumbled, messed up a handoff exchange on the goal line twice. They had a flubbed up punt snap. They had a short punt. Louisville missed an extra point, missed 2 field goals, and had penalties that cost them a chip shot to win the game at the end. Neither team played very good football, but it was one that nobody wanted to win. I saw Dabo hugging somebody on that sideline because he was just happy he can get them back into something positive. Now, they've got one game they got to win this week against Furman, I believe. If they beat Furman, then they've got house money on the South Carolina game. But can you imagine if they beat Furman, beat South Carolina, and then win a bowl game? He's really turned that into as much of a positive as you can when we all know it was a very, very tough year for Clemson.
Yeah, Clemson looking to get back to a bowl game. That would look like a positive considering that they were under 500 just a couple of weeks ago. They have lost 4 home games this year. Hopefully they could right the ship, win out their next 2, and win the rivalry game over a down South Carolina Gamecock team that challenged Texas A&M. We'll see how it plays out. Coach, a team that we're not going to recap all that much, but Miami gets a critical win in dominating fashion over NC State. They're back in contention now for a college football playoff appearance and an outside shot at an ACC title. Thoughts about that win last Saturday in South Beach?
Well, I mean, you couldn't have asked for more, and I don't think any of us were ready to give Miami credit for being able to do that. They came out and dominated the football game 42-7. An NC State team that played very well against Louisville. I didn't think anybody looked at better in the conference than NC State did the week before that. But Miami got a huge win. Now they need a couple of more. They've got a big game coming up down the road in that conference. They've got to play up Pitt, and they got to play Pitt, and not Virginia, but Pitt. They play Pitt as one of their big games to finish up in Georgia Tech, I believe. They play also
Virginia Tech. Miami plays Vatech this week. Yeah,
Vatech, and then they also finish up there and can finish up very strong. But they probably cannot make the ACC championship game. But they could maybe slide in to a 10-2 team, like we talked about. Can 2 teams make the college football playoffs? If it's going to be 2 teams, it's probably going to be Miami's that other team.
When we come back, we'll recap the other games in week number 12. And there's a new head coach for Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. We'll talk about it coming up next. Back on the Bowden Blitz, Joe Lisi and Coach Bowden breaking down week number 12. We left off talking about the Clemson victory over Louisville. We'll turn our attention to another team that got back to 500, and that's Mike Norvell and the Florida State Seminoles. They picked up their second conference win. They picked it up in dominating fashion. They knock around Virginia Tech. They win this matchup 34-14. Coach Mike Norvell at least steadied the waters. He has an opportunity to get this team back to a bowl game. That would be a positive entering week number 13. What are the thoughts around the victory last Saturday night in Tallahassee and big picture for Mike Norvell and the Seminoles the rest of the way?
Well, they scored 6 straight times and coasted to victory, but the fans are very frustrated. I didn't sense it. I know the school does not want to make a change financially. They want to somehow pull it off. The fans are frustrated. You know, sometimes they like you to fire a coach early so you don't have a chance to have a winning season. But anyway, he's got a chance to get them to a bowl game. I think that would be a key. But I do wonder, when I still hear all the frustration coming out of Tallahassee, if they were to lose next week to NC State and then lose to Florida, does that bring it up to the point where they feel like they've got to make a decision? Anyway, right now, won a good game, dominated against Virginia Tech, rushed for over 200 yards. They're still up and down and inconsistent, but he's very close to getting to a bowl. And if he can get one out of the next two, he'll get to a bowl, and that should quiet the people for a little bit. But you still got to beat Florida at Florida State to make people happy, and they finish up the season with that one.
Let's not forget they had 2 wins last year. You get to 6, that's a 4-game progression. I know it's not what the fans in Tallahassee wanted, because the perception is you go 13-0 3 years ago in the regular season. There's no reason that you should have been 2-10 overall, but you really have to look at it objectively and say, okay, it is now a 2 or a 3 year fix. You could bring in the best head coach in year number 1, expecting to get this team back to 10 or 11 wins is unrealistic. So if Mike Norvell is going to turn around this program, it does start with at least a 6-6 overall record, and then you could turn your attention to 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, I think what's happened is the fans, when they look at the strength of the ACC and where Florida State has been in the past and the amount of money and commitment they've put into the program and into the salaries of the coaches, there were a lot of those people thinking that the turnaround should get you to 8 or something like that. But the point is, the people that make the decision understand it might take 2 years. I think he's safe. I think it'd be good, go out there and get this win. And then I don't want to say you're playing with the house money against Florida, but in a way you kind of are, because I think you've got a bowl game locked in.
Absolutely. We'll see exactly what transpires. Can he get that transfer talent in there, especially if they finish 7-5? They finish 7-5. You're going to have some potential playmakers to come in to maybe elevate them to a 9 or a 10 or an even 11-win season in 2026. But you have to keep that momentum rolling, and we'll see how it plays out the rest of the way. Coach and I will break down that game later in the week for the Seminoles. One of the most impressive wins, not just in the top 25 in the conference, Coach, took place in Pittsburgh. It was a marquee battle. It was one of the hottest teams in college football. Pittsburgh had won 5 straight. They had an opportunity with a red-hot quarterback to knock off a top 10 opponent. They were catching 12.5 points at home against Notre Dame. Notre Dame took this game right from the get-go. They built a double-digit lead. They forced turnovers, never looked back, and they win this going away in dominating fashion, 37-15 over Pat Narduzzi in Pittsburgh. Everything is still in front of both of these teams. Notre Dame has to win out to keep their playoff hopes alive. Pittsburgh has to win their next 2 to get to a potential ACC championship. Thoughts about last week's win by Notre Dame over the Panthers?
You know, I keep going back to that quote that Narduzzi made during the offseason. You know, we don't have to win this game, and his players played like they didn't have to win it. Well, Notre Dame had to win it because they've got to win all theirs, and they played like they had to win it. And that's kind of the way I look at it right now. You kind of wish you had a victory there, but Pitt made mistakes. 2 turnovers. The quarterback had a couple of turnovers. 14-0 before the game turned around. One was a pick 6. And they got behind, and there's no catching up, I think, as Pitt against Notre Dame. Of course, Jeremiah Price had a great Jeremiah Love had a great game, 147 yards rushing. Notre Dame just dominated, but you made mistakes, turned the ball over, and that was what the concern was with Henschel. He's been an exciting freshman, but he's had turnovers in the last games, and he's got to keep from having that as they go forward, because if he turns the ball over, they have a hard time winning against better football teams.
They do. Now, Notre Dame is that defense, for me, is what's really kicking it up a notch. We knew that they had a dominant rushing attack with Price and Love, and C.J. Carr had stepped up. He looked poised in the pocket, stepped up, made some big throws. But the defense now, from the loss of Texas A&M, Coach, has progressed week to week to week to where we see them potentially taking it over games, being opportunistic. This is similar to what we saw last year where Notre Dame made it to the national title game. Are they built for the long haul the way they're playing right here, right now?
Yeah, they are. And this team, this is a heck of a football coach. I think everybody sees that. But, defense, run the football. As you get to the playoffs, to postseason, two things you can't invent if you don't have it. It's hard to invent a good running attack, or change a couple of blocking schemes or make different calls. You've got to have one that's built over the season. That's what they have at Notre Dame. You've got to have a defensive mentality. That's what they have at Notre Dame. So they're playing right into the postseason by getting better and better, and that's exactly where they've gone. And now they will be favored as they finish up their schedule, and that should get them. All indications are get them to that college football playoff.
We'll see how exactly it plays out for Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. When we come back, we'll talk about the big hiring in Plattsburgh. It wasn't Shane Beamer. It's James Franklin coming to Virginia Tech. Can he bring the Hokies back to dominance? Coach, there's people across both sides of the fence. Some love it, some hate it. When Coach and I return, we'll break down the opinion about whether James Franklin could get Virginia Tech back to the pinnacle of college football right here on the Bowden Blitz. All right, back on the Bowden Blitz, Joe Lisi and Coach Bowden breaking down all things ACC. We left off talking about James Franklin finalizing a deal to become the new head coach at Virginia Tech. Coach, he takes over for Brent Pry that accumulated a 16-24 overall record in Blacksburg during his last 3 years. Thoughts about James Franklin? Can he take this team back to potentially a college football playoff contender?
Well, I think he could take them back to an ACC contender. And if you're an ACC championship contender, that naturally puts you in line for the college football playoffs. Whether they can get to that elite place where they're favored to go far into the playoffs, that's a whole nother level of football that's going to take NIL and major commitment in a lot of ways. But I think if you're looking for a Power 4 coach that's had a lot of experience and success, James Franklin has that. Other than not being able to win the big one, and they fired him before he lost a lot of football games. They fired him because, again, he could win 10, but he couldn't win 11. And I'll be honest with you, if you can win 10 a year at Virginia Tech, they're going to be pretty happy at Virginia Tech. So he seems to have a personality and a demeanor that would fit in at Virginia Tech, I think, and would be a good fit. So if you're looking for an experienced head coach that you had a chance to get, I don't know that you could get much different than James Franklin. I love to look for young G5 coaches or assistant coaches on the up. I love to see a little somebody like that, because your next great one's going to be one we don't know about right now.
Right. I think it's important, though. He had great success at Vanderbilt. Back-to-back 9-4 seasons. That's what got him the job at Penn State. He won 2 straight bowl games, something that at that particular time for Vanderbilt had never been done in that type of time frame. And now you look at the expectations of Virginia Tech they're going to be playing Miami this week, but this is a 3-win football team, Coach.
Yeah.
You look at the team, they might not even be now the best team in the state with Virginia and Tony Elliott roaring to a potential ACC title. It's not going to be a one-year fix. The expectation isn't going to be college football playoff or bust in year number 1, and that's potentially a good thing for the Hokies. And more importantly, James Franklin coming from a place with Penn State where he had to win every big game. Now he can have a bigger body of work, 2-3 years to build it his way.
Yeah. Like I said, I think if you're going after a successful Power 4 coach, you couldn't have got one more successful. And you made a good point. Vanderbilt, that's an important game when you're at Virginia Tech and you're watching a guy win 9 games 2 years in a row at Vanderbilt. You understand the success that it takes to do that. But I don't know. I will say this. Yes, you don't expect to turn everything around in 1 year. But if you make a strong commitment to the NIL package, to your NIL packages, and you get a good coach in there, the ACC is not the SEC. It may want to be. They are not the SEC. And the level of competition top to bottom is going to give you a chance to excel quicker than if you were over there in the SEC trying to build from scratch.
Now, they do have a game with Miami this weekend. They're significant underdogs, 17.5-point dogs to the U. Miami has strung back-to-back games against Syracuse and NC State where they covered. Well, they didn't cover against Syracuse, but won by 28, covered as a 14.5-point home favorite over NC State. You know, this game for Virginia Tech, you're playing with house money, right? It's similar to, throw the kitchen sink at Miami. Let's not forget, this was the game last year, potentially. They should have won. You can make the argument, the Hail Mary on the final play of the game, flip a quarter. It could have went either way. The replay assistant favored in favor of the Hurricanes. But, you know, how do they match up against the Hurricanes? And does the weather in this particular matchup play a factor with Miami going into a cold weather environment?
No, I don't. I don't think there's much left at Virginia Tech. I don't give them a chance. I think Miami has everything on the line. Miami has to look good every game. And Virginia Tech, they're already planning on building for the future. They've got a new coach. They're thinking about that future. I really see Miami needing this game and playing well. And they've beaten Virginia Tech 5 years in a row, 7 out of the last 8 against Virginia Tech. Miami has scored 38 or more points. I want to say they've scored in 4 out of the last 5 games. They've scored 38 or more points. So I don't think Virginia Tech can hang with them. I don't think this far removed from the coaching change, they'll have a lot. So Miami's this is a big one for Miami, and I don't think it gets all that cold in Virginia this time of year just yet to be uncomfortable like it would be in New York or Syracuse or something like that, or I would say Buffalo because Syracuse is inside.
For Coach Bowden, I'm Joe Lisi. We'll see you later in the week right here on the Bowden Blitz.